What's up, YouTube? I'm gonna do a quick banger for you today. As you can see here, I got a bunch of things searched up about Western civilization, right? And I fucking hate that term, and I'm gonna explain to you why. I touched on it briefly in a couple of different videos I did. I jump into um, a lot of times, in the Western world, they try to conceptualize and trait the attributes of Western civilization and the birth and origin of it to Greece. In a lot of the videos, I explain that's complete bullshit because all of the Greek philosophers and historians that we praise today, Herodotus, Pythagoras, Hecataeus of Abida, uh, Plato, they all got their educations in Egypt and admitted that the Egypts taught them everything they know about civilization, philosophy, culture. They admitted that their gods, Zeus, uh, Athena, you know, is Ares Greek? Yeah, Ares. All these gods were based on Egyptian gods, black gods. And not only that, the first known genius, Imhotep, who created the step pyramids and did one of the first surgical procedures, uh, was deified in Greek culture. But look, that's neither here nor there. You can do your research on that. I talk about it in a bunch of videos. Go look at some of my old videos. They need some more views anyway. So, um, yeah, definitely. In terms of that, but I want to get into let's start from the base that the when normally people of the Western world of America or England when they talk about Western civilization, where they start from. Let's start with Greece, right? So who conquered the Greeks? The Romans conquered the Greeks, right? Enslaved them. Took a lot of different, like for instance, wasn't Ep- Ep- uh, Epictetus? He was Greek. He was a Greek slave. He became a renowned philosopher in Rome, but he was a Greek slave. Uh, Seneca was a statesman. But you had a few, but that's neither here nor there. My point is the Romans conquered the Greeks, right? And what happened to Rome? Right? And I want to get deep into this analysis, right? With how did the Romans fall, right? And that whole idea of Byzantine that didn't fucking exist. That was made up in 16th century Western Europe. That idea of Byzantines and separating them from the Romans. No, that was the Eastern Roman Empire. When Theodosius split the empire in two between his son Honorius in the west, and I forgot the dude names on the east, Attalus or something like that. Once he split the empire between two, they were still both the Roman Empire. Those were provinces that were controlled by Rome. All right, Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople, so he took a lot of resources from Rome, or was it Ravenna that was the capital at the time, and moved it over to the east. But that was still all the Roman Empire. But who destroyed the Western Roman Empire, right? So you have the Germanic invasions. And what language am I speaking right now? I'm speaking English, which is a Germanic language, right? It's an Anglo-Saxon language. The Anglos, Saxons, Germanic people, right? Um, what else? You got the Dewey, you got the Lugos, you got the Swabi, you got you got Gallic tribes. You got so many. You got the Franks. Franks were a Germanic type. You got so many different tribes, right? So you have to understand how the migrations happen. You had the Huns forcing a lot of these Germanic tribes to migrate west into Roman lands because they were just desolating everything. They were destroying everything. Central Europeans, central steps. So this is between like Eastern Europe and uh, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Eastern Europe, and Western Asia. A lot of them came from like the Sarmatian steppes and things like that. Um, but you have them invading Germanic lands and pushing into the Eastern Empire and both the Western Empire. But it was a consolidated effort. You had groups formed like the Visigoths and the Ostrogoths. Um, that you had that Gothic invasion into the Western Roman Empire. And at first, I think it was the Visigoths that helped, or was it the Ostrogoths? This is one of the Goths that helped fight Attila with Aetius, who was the emperor of the Western Empire at the time. And they defeated Attila, pushed him back east, and he later died. Probably was assassinated more than likely. And you had the Huns break up from there, but as far as the Germanic invasions into the Western Roman Empire, you have the Longobards, you got the Ostrogoths, you got the Visigoths, you got the Vandals. Think about the term vandal, vandalize. That term literally comes from the Germanic people. They sacked Rome so relentlessly, the city of Rome so relentlessly that we created a terminology for them. Right? This is the real history of Western Europeans, because you have to understand the Greeks and Romans were civilizations that went along that were on the Mediterranean. They were more, if anything, Mediterranean civilizations compared to European civilizations. They didn't look at Germanic people. Later on, they accepted Germanic people into the empire because they acted as foederati. They acted as the army after they got rid of standing armies and conscription laws in Rome. They used the Germanic people for their standing armies. Um, but yeah, so you have the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, you have the Longobards. They took over Hispania, they took over Italy, they took over North Africa, which acted as the breadbasket of the Romans. Um, Carthage, Mauritania, um, parts of Libya. The Eastern Empire was able to keep Egypt on in the Levant and the eastern portions of the empire. But there was times I know Justinian sent Belisarius to try to reconquer the land to some effects, but you had it was just too much going on there. And they really didn't. It wasn't really in the benefits, fiscally, that made it necessarily for them needed for them to stay there. So, but the West and the East, once the West fell, the East still stood. So this idea, I know you had the Pope later named Charlemagne, the Holy Roman Empire Emperor, and they tried to split because of religious differences between the Eastern Orthodoxy Church and the Catholic Church. First of all religious institutions are fucking criminal no matter what. And who gives them the right to say that they're not Romans anymore? They're Greeks or they're Byzantines. The Greeks was engulfed into the Roman Empire. They were Romans. They were truly Rome. But how did the Eastern Empire fail? They lasted for 1,000 years after the Western Roman Empire fell, right? Well, the East fell predominantly. A lot of people like to just point out, oh, the Turks, Mehmed II conquered Constantinople. How was the Eastern Roman empires at that point so weak that they was that the Turks was able a newly formed civilization at the time able to conquest and take Constantinople, and it took them I think about a century or two for them to even be able to take it. Well, you have to look at the Fourth Crusades. First of all, the Crusaders, the Western Catholic Western civilization that you guys quote so much, betrayed. They initially went to go help the Eastern Roman Empire, but they betrayed them. And then by the Fourth Crusade, you had them depose Alexios, sack Constantinople, stole all type of ancient religion relics and all type of miscellaneous things that was important to cultural affinity upon the Eastern Empire. Broke them up into many different client states. You had the Latin client states controlling Constantinople and parts of northeastern Thrace at the time. You had the Duchy of Epirus, uh, near like Dalmatia and things like that. Then you had the County of Nicaea. Um, so they broke up they broke up the Roman Empire into many different states that weakened the empire and allowed the Seljuk Turks to conquer more land and gain more power. And I think that initially they were going to help crusade against the Seljuk Turks, and then the Western civilization pointed their irony and their air um, to the Romans. So basically, the Western civilization, the Western Europeans that we see today, the Germanic people destroyed both the East and Western Empire. So, I know your history just like I know my history. Maybe you don't know your history as well. That's why you keep going on with this Western civilization bullshit and also high and mighty and also civilized and also, it's full of shit. You guys, the Romans looked at you as barbarians. The Greeks looked at you as barbarians because you acted in tribal, violent manners. Uh, and you're still and predominantly, I don't want to say all people of that descent act that way now, but as far as your governing bodies, your nation states, they absolutely act in that way. America has always acted in that way. How many democratically democratically elected leaders that did you help overthrow for the benefit of private interests from private corporations. The CIA works in tangent with private interests. Let's look at Venezuela right now. You're literally stealing their oil, and then your Gulf allies, which are all dictatorships, the Saudis, the UAE, they are all dictatorships. Nixon made a deal with them when he moved off the gold standard to sell all fucking petrol. Make sure you're selling all petrol in the dollar. That's where you got the idea of the petrodollar. They got bombed so bad over the last couple of weeks and months, uh, in the situation with Iran. So this is kind of like helping America standing on a global standard in terms of being. Now they have Venezuela has one of the most naturally rich oil resources in the Western Hemisphere. Now they're a major player. Yeah, they always had access to oil, but now they're a major seller of oil, and even China, is going to have to buy some oil from America. So America has always acted in the same way as thugs. They still act this way today. They have acted this way since its inception, whether it's spreading smallpox and diseases and genocide in the native indigenous people, which are my ancestors, or enslaving my other ancestors. And just so you know, only 50,000 Africans was brought to North America. Most Africans were brought to South America and the Caribbean. So what does that tell you? A lot of people of Aboriginal American descent looked like me and was already here, and some darker than me and woolly, thick hair. You later see in report. This is going on a whole different tangent, but you later see that a lot of people that was labeled indigenous was then later labeled colored through 19th century censuses, and that happened for a whole bunch of different reasons. But we can talk about that a whole nother day. Um, but back to the point I was stating. Yeah, so America's inception, the founding fathers that everybody always try to quote the Constitution, bro. They said that Africans was another human being was 3/5 of man. They only John Adams didn't own slaves. Only John Adams was the only principal ones. It might have been one or two other ones. I can't remember off the top of my head. But majority of the founding fathers were pieces of shit, and I don't really give a fuck about their opinion. And if that makes you feel away, this is just history is facts. This is just anecdotal facts. This is evidence you could try to reproach me for it, but these are just facts. So if it hurts your feelings, it is what it is. Um, yeah, so even you look at I had a video. If you looked at my video about how the West openly saying they're going back to open colonization. You have Marco Rubio and that Munich meeting, getting rounds of applause of European nations. Europe has never stopped. If you look at the Congo, if you look at different parts of Africa, they're stealing resources, giving them pennies on the dollars for it now. That's why you have Mali, Chad, and Niger. And funny, any nation that stands up uh, to imperialism from Western nations, they have a sudden attack of jihadis. I wonder why the jihadis, ISIS, and all these different organizations, Al Shabaab, why they never attack Israel or any Western nations. And if anybody quotes, "Oh, terrorism," when it comes to the Iranians or some stupid shit like that, bro, or 9/11, 15 of the 19 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia collaborates with Israel and the United States in this stupendous level, and like, you know, we don't even have to go down that rabbit hole, man. It's a lot of different points we could, take this conversation to. I just wanted to just address this really quick, just do this quick video. I got a lot going on right now, but I plan to drop some more edited content and more fixturized videos and things of that nature soon. Just got a lot of things going on I'm trying to manage right now in my personal life. But I just get so fucking pissed off when I hear this fucking whole Western civilization. Oh, Western civilization is gonna be destroyed. Or shut the fuck up, bro. You don't know what you're talking. You don't know history. You don't know history. You don't even know current day things that's going on. You don't know. First of all, Kennedy was trying to break the anti. Kennedy was the last white hope. I want to make a video about Kennedy, and his relationship. And his investment on moving towards a more anti-imperialist state from these Western civilizations. He wanted to fucking free up Laos from, you know, imperialist intrusion, or he mentioned Congo with Lumumba. What they ended up doing, Lumumba cut him up in thousands of pieces, and they killed Jack Kennedy himself for standing up. for anti-imperialism. That was enough to get him murdered, plus a lot more. But I want to do a whole separate video on there because I think Kennedy was a man's man, and I think we haven't had anything close to him, since who stood for something and was actually principled and put his money where his mouth was. But yeah, I think this is a good way to cut it here. This whole Western civilization shit, shut the fuck up about that shit. That shit is bullshit.